Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Monday, February the 10th. We have officially concluded the 2024-2025 NFL football season. It was an interesting one for certain. It saw the Eagles win the Super Bowl and the Titans be the worst team in football. Now, everything is wiped clean. We move forward into another offseason where we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the NFL draft and specifically trying to take some themes that we learned from the 2024 season and seeing what can apply to the Titans and what could be successful for this team trying to turn its fortunes around after a 3-14 record and owning the number one overall draft pick at this point in time. We are always happy to have you and for you guys to share the broadcast around with your friends as we get ready for another exciting offseason. If football season can't be exciting for the Tennessee Titans, the offseasons typically are. So we'll ramp up with great combine coverage. You know, I'll be in Indianapolis for a week. I'm going to be at the NFL owners meetings this year, which will provide, I think, some unique and different insights to coverage that we haven't done before, but I think is going to be beneficial for you. At the end of March into April, obviously, we'll have an exciting event that I'm going to announce on Wednesday related to the Titans and the draft that I think you guys are going to enjoy. And certainly we'll have the draft itself. It'll take place in Green Bay, but the Titans kind of hold all the leverage because they are currently the team that's on the clock until such time as they potentially decide to trade out, or they could stick and pick with the number one overall selection at this point in time. There's no perfect way to go about trying to fix this thing, but there are a couple of different strategies here and some recent buzz around the Titans and the number one overall pick that can be applicable to how this team moves forward. There's also the Aaron Rodgers news, and for teams with quarterback needs, whether or not Aaron Rodgers makes sense, Aaron Rodgers will certainly be discussed as an option until such time as he finds his next home. It sounds like he could continue to keep playing. I also think there's some school of thought that sees Aaron Rodgers retire if he doesn't feel like the situation is well suited enough for him to continue his NFL career. But I'm pretty sure that he doesn't want to go out after the last two seasons with the Jets. So we will see what happens here in the coming months and coming weeks, and we'll have a lot of fun talking about it and breaking it down together. I see AC720 on YouTube says Buck's trying to ambush Amy and get an interview. I mean, yes, I would like to talk to Amy Adams Strunk at some point in time. That is not my sole objective of the NFL owners meetings, but that's as close as I'm going to get the opportunity to try and get a comment from her on something. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. Maybe it's off the record, maybe it's on the record. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that need still to be answered for around here. And it would be, I think, appreciated by you, the audience, and by the fan base at large if we were able to hear from Amy in at least her own words, rather than, I guess the statements are her own words, but you understand that these things are heavily vetted, that they're edited by people after the fact, that they're put together to make sure that she can't get buried with some of the commentary in the statements after the fact. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I think it's important for Titans fans to hear from her at some point in time. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of that than need be, but there's also great insight to be learned from the breakfasts with the coaches and the general managers. They're available every day from Sunday through Wednesday at the owners meetings, and you get to be around a lot of the NFL management and people of that sort, essentially, that can help inform you about who the people that have come to work for this franchise are. For example, Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst with the Green Bay Packers. Like, that's where the Titans front office connections are right now. And I think there's a great deal more that can be learned. So yeah, owners meeting coverage is something I'm looking forward to, and something that I think can continue to add some additional insight to the direction that this team is heading. But in the meantime, we got some draft buzz, and it's not new. Like, this is news that you have already heard. It's just being reported at a league-wide scale because the rest of the NFL, obviously, is not paying as close attention to the Tennessee Titans, even though they have the number one overall pick. So we'll get into that. We'll get into Rodgers. We'll have a great time. We'll see what Bert's got at the end of the show. First, we need you guys to share the show around Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. in the comment section. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet the show in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you're on Facebook Live, you can share now to public in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you're on YouTube or Twitch, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend to do the same. Like Curtis, who says, holy hell, the beard grows back so darn fast. Yeah, baby, I'm Egyptian. Like, that's what I do. I have great skin tone and great facial hair. Now, I also, I'm probably hairier than your average human being, but gives me the opportunity to experiment a little with the facial hair from time to time. So if I like the mustache, I keep the mustache. If I don't like the mustache, I just grow the beard back. That's how this works around here. Genetics, it's a wonderful thing, but we're not here to talk genetics. We're here to talk Titans, and we will do so this evening with the latest draft buzz. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at Zen Sports. Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN. We got college basketball on tonight. You can bet basketball, hockey, all of your favorite major sports in the Zen Sports app. Promo code ATOZTN is how you get it done. You can also get the best workout in Middle Tennessee with TrueMath Fitness. Your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated. Just the people and the coaching staff and the facility that you know you can trust at TrueMathFitness.com. By Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, online at TwoRiversFord.com for more information. And by the Bart Durham Injury Law Firm. You deserve to be paid. Find out more information about the process to getting paid at BartDurham.com. Football season's officially over. Draft season officially begins. And looking around at everything that we've got to work with at this point in time, we understand that the stakes for the Titans are as high as they've ever been. Now, there was a report, I'll call it a report, even though it's not new information. It may be new information to the rest of the league. To Titans fans, it's not news, but it's revolving around you, so it's worth kind of bringing it back to the forefront. Ian Rappaport put out a piece on NFL.com on Saturday before the Super Bowl. And it talked about the monumental decisions to be made during this upcoming NFL offseason. The Tennessee Titans, obviously at the top of the draft, have many critical decisions, not just at quarterback to make, but across the board. They're trying to rebuild the franchise. It's now legitimately being acknowledged as a true blue rebuild. They're trying to put this thing back together, and they have a lot of legwork to do on the front end. They have the number one overall pick, which allows them the most leverage and the most flexibility. So we'll see what the Titans ultimately decide to do. And what Rap Sheet puts in his piece is, quote, while it's early in the process, Tennessee has an open mind with the first pick, sources say. All options are on the table, including possibly trading the pick, and the Titans are expected to receive calls from other teams. Not new information, but yes, this is accurate. This has been something that the Titans have said in Mike Borgonzi's introductory press conference. This is something they've spoken on at the Senior Bowl. So that's where they are with this current situation right now. We knew this. We've known this for a month. But the NFL world, it's okay to be reminded of it and to understand that this is not new information, but it may be a refresher for the other 31 fan bases that don't give a shit about the Tennessee Titans or paying attention to them on a daily basis. So, open to trading the pick, all options on the table, going into this with an open mind. That all checks out. The question for you, your Two Rivers Ford take, is this: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, in the comment section, if you would be so kind, is what would you prefer the Titans to do? Pick at number one overall or to trade out at this point in time? This can be an ongoing discussion. We'll probably ask you some version of this question several times over before the draft or until such time as the pick is either kept or traded. But as we sit here on February the 10th, one day removed from the NFL season being over, what would you prefer the Titans to do at this point in time? Would you prefer them to pick at number one overall or trade out? It's your Two Rivers Ford take. As always, it's made possible by the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at TwoRiversFord.com for more information. They are where you go for quality American-made Ford vehicles and award-winning customer service that cannot be matched. I'm a Two Rivers Ford customer. I couldn't speak highly enough about my dealings with them over the course of my decade here in living in Middle Tennessee. TwoRiversFord.com, in business for over 4 decades, serving Middle Tennessee. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet. So a couple of comments here. Leo says, just trade the pick and let Levis run it back. Nobody wants that, Leo. Not even you want that. Leo, I think is, I assume, is being sarcastic about that situation because not a single solitary soul wants to go down that route, really wants to go down that route again. I don't believe that there's anybody out there. And if you do, I would question your sobriety, basically, at this point. So maybe Leo is still dealing with some residual effects of a Super Bowl party and offering such strategies, but I don't think that's a strategy. I think that's a terrible idea, respectfully. John says, Buck, any news about certain teams that have interest in the number one pick? I mean, the Giants are the team that there will be other teams that call. There will be other teams that kind of poke and prod to see what Tennessee is willing to trade out for. But the Giants are the team to watch. They need a quarterback. Their front office and coaching staff are in job security saving mode. They are currently picking third, which means Tennessee right now at the top of the draft has more leverage than them. And the Browns, who need a quarterback and are picking second, have more leverage than them. They could trade up to leapfrog Cleveland and get the best quarterback on the board. They could trade with, Cleveland could trade with Tennessee to keep New York from leapfrogging them. So I would look at the Giants first and foremost as the most viable option there. They are going to be the team that has significant interest. How far they're willing to go as far as a compensation package for that number one overall pick remains to be seen. But the Giants are the team to keep an eye on. Amar says, draft the damn quarterback. Don't overthink it. Trucking with Casper says trade back. Isaac agrees. So does David. Curtis wants a quarterback at number one overall. William Scott Easton says simply trade. Corey says trade, but no lower than 3 at this point. So there's a couple of different things that you can look at from this point in time. And you have to consider for the Titans a couple of things. One, you have the most leverage in the draft because you own the number one overall pick. You don't know what these quarterbacks, whether or not you think they're good quality prospects or you're kind of down on this year's crop of quarterbacks, or specifically the guys who could go in the first round. Right now, the conversation is really only around the 2. Perhaps there's somebody unexpected that sneaks up into the first round. But right now, we're just talking about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. You have no idea what their NFL careers are going to be. They could be hugely successful. They could be future Hall of Famers. And you just don't know that yet because this is an educated guessing process. There's also the school of thought that says, well, yeah, they could end up being quality players, but will they ever be good enough to be better, the best at their position, like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or Patrick Mahomes in any one given situation? Can they be the best player on their team every game, which is what's required of guys like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes? And more often than not, Joe Burrow, though Joe Burrow has a little more help than the other two. Lamar Jackson has a little more help than the other two at this point. They're still excellent players, and they still elevate their team to the occasion at this point in time. You need a player who's going to make good decisions, elevate their teammates, and also still has some kind of high-level trait that makes them worth a first-round draft pick, much less the number one overall draft pick. Now, here's the thing that people get caught up in too much. Of the 4 quarterbacks, and this was a good reminder that Lucas gave me on the radio show today, of the 4 AFC, the top quarterbacks in the AFC, and arguably the top quarterbacks in the sport. So depending on how you would stack them, I know that Jalen Hurts just outperformed Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think anybody would take Jalen Hurts over Patrick Mahomes if all things were equal. So you've got Pat, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. How many of those quarterbacks who are the kind of dudes that you would want, how many of them were the number one overall pick? That's the question here, because it provides you a useful thought exercise to say, oh, well, do I actually have to draft a quarterback with the number one overall pick? Is there anything that dictates that the best quarterback has to be drafted number one overall? How many of those 4 quarterbacks that I just mentioned were the number one overall pick in their respective drafts? You might have to think about it for a second. Maybe you're able to name it off the top of your head. Jack Tripper says Josh Allen is overrated. That's stupid. Josh Allen is the most talented quarterback in football. Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback, but Josh Allen is the most talented quarterback in the sport I would argue it's between him and Lamar at this point in time. So that's a nonsensical comment. But when you really think about the quarterback drafts, and specifically where teams are finding quarterbacks, how many of them had to be drafted number one overall? We'll talk about that together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. The intel edge you need to succeed can be found at GaryAshton.com. Don't sell without the intel. So, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. How many of those quarterbacks were drafted number one overall? Burrow's the only one. Now, Burrow is worthy of the number one overall pick, and you could argue that all of those players, all those four players that I just named, were worthy of a number one overall pick, but not at the time that they were drafted. Josh Allen was a top of the first round pick, as was Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs traded up for him. Lamar Jackson was selected 32 overall. The Ravens drafted Hayden Hurst first that year, or with their first round pick, then traded back into the first round once Lamar Jackson was sitting there at 32 overall to be had. Jalen Hurts, who just won the Super Bowl and won Super Bowl MVP, was he a number one overall pick? No, he was a second round pick. And he came in while Carson Wentz was still on the Eagles roster at that point in time, who was a first round pick. But even Wentz wasn't the number one overall pick. You can find, it's not easy to find quality quarterback play. And Jalen Hurts has a proven track record of winning. Jalen Hurts has a different kind of demeanor than a lot of these guys that I've just mentioned that makes him uniquely equipped to manage the high-pressure situations that NFL quarterbacks are placed in. But of the 5 top quarterbacks in the game that I just named, only one of them was taken with the first overall pick. And Joe Burrow was uniquely qualified to be the first overall pick in the year that he was drafted. It does not have to be a situation where don't overthink it, take the quarterback. No, overthinking it would be convincing yourself that a quarterback has to be taken number one overall. It doesn't mean that the Titans shouldn't take a quarterback number one overall. Like I've said many, many times, and I'll continue to say, and I'm sure you'll get tired of me repeating myself, if they have these players, either one of them, graded high enough that they can justify taking them first overall, then take them. Don't think twice about it. But there's conversations to be had with both of them. There's conversations to be had about who's actually the best prospect in this draft class. And there's some school of thought to say if the Titans aren't in a win-now mode, and they're most certainly not, that you could look at this scenario and say, okay, you give yourself, I know fans are impatient, and fans are right to be impatient. There's nothing wrong with looking around, being dissatisfied with the results on the field, being dissatisfied with the quarterback approach. And if they don't do it exactly the way that you want them to do it this offseason, I'm not going to kill you for that either, because I get it. I get that you're tired of waiting. I get that you want one of these guys. But that's not how your front office thinks, and it's probably not how your front office is going to go about this. They have stated many times over that they're trying to build the best possible football team. Mike Borgonzi has emphasized specifically the need to build through the trenches. Now, there's 2 schools of thought on this, because here's Borgonzi talking about the number one overall draft pick at the Senior Bowl.
It really depends on the situation in rehab. You're never going to pass up. If you get a chance to take a good player, you're not going to pass that opportunity up. So that's really a strategy as you get into the draft and you're building those pockets on the board and see what's on the board when you go through it. But we're never going to pass up a good player.
So never going to pass up a good player. That's Borgonzi. But Borgonzi also at the same event, the Senior Bowl, is talking about, they've got holes all over this roster.
I mean, listen, you can go through the roster. We're going through, I'm meeting with the coaches now, and we have some holes to fill along, offensive line. That would be number one. And then just depth level across the whole team right now. Creating competition is going to be the biggest thing, whether it's through free agency, through the draft. It might be a guy that we sign off the street or the workout guy. But really just, we want to build the fronts first, offensive, defensive lines, and then build depth along the perimeter. Yeah.
They want to build the fronts first. So he's acknowledging, we're not going to pass on a player just for the sake of trading out and getting the most possible picks. If that's a player that we think can help, then we'll take that player. But he's also saying we want to build through the fronts. The Kansas City Chiefs got their asses kicked on the offensive line and the defensive line yesterday. Philadelphia rolled in huge part due to the fact that they dominated in the trenches. It's still better, no matter who your quarterback is, to go into a fist fight with the best overall team at your back and not just hoping that you have a quarterback that's so much better than the other quarterback that they can mitigate a lot of the issues that your team has. The Kansas City Chiefs got taken for a ride last night by A.J. Brown, by Josh Sweat, by Jalen Carter, by Milton Williams, who many people weren't talking about except for Greg Cosell in the lead up to that Super Bowl, the defensive lineman, one of the many defensive linemen that Philadelphia has. They had a pretty good handle, the Chiefs did, on Saquon Barkley. That's about the only thing that they did well. Philadelphia did everything else better, including play quarterback, than Patrick Mahomes did in that particular game. Now, it can be a confluence of two things because sometimes you get lucky, but you got to put yourself in position to make your own luck. It can be true that the Chiefs played one of their worst games ever in the Patrick Mahomes era, at the same time as the Eagles played one of their best games, overall team games, with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback. Those two things happened in the same game and saw the lopsided result that it was. It was 40-22. It was never that close. It was 40-6 in all reality. This is a situation where history is telling you, do not cave to the pressures that the number one overall pick can bring, because it does bring some level of pressure, some level of scrutiny, some level of expectation. Make sound decisions. Be steadfast in your process. If your process dictates that you take that quarterback number one overall, fine. Good luck, God bless. If your process dictates that there are better players that can help you, even if it's a slower burn in the lead up to turning this into a more competitive franchise, a sustainably competitive franchise, take that path. Be steadfast in your decision-making, in your process. And they've talked a great deal about how they believe in the process that's going to play itself out in this offseason and potentially future offseasons to come. All that to say that for the Titans, it's I would lean towards the idea that they would trade out of this draft pick. It would fall in line with their stated goal of gathering 30 picks in the next 3 years and 12 in the top 100. It's not impossible to do if you don't trade out of number one overall, but it's a lot harder to do if you don't take this opportunity that very rarely comes around to trade out of number one overall. And so at least things are trending in that direction. They also have to get a good enough offer. And one of a recent example of an offer I'll give you here in just a second of what the Titans could stand to get back for a number one overall pick. Here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Bart Durham Injury Law Firm. You deserve to be paid, and Blair Durham and his team are there to help you. You can understand how they have helped so many people across more than 75 years in Tennessee and in Kentucky understand and meet their attorneys, understand their case results and their areas of practice. You can get your free consultation online today because you deserve to be paid. Blair Durham and the team at Bart Durham Injury Law are there to serve you. Go to bartdurham.com for more information today. With everything that's going on right now, you look at the Titans situation and you say, okay, maybe you don't have to draft the quarterback number one overall, but the quarterback is the most important position, and having the number one overall pick gives you the best example or the best opportunity to cash in on the most important position. The last time the number one overall pick was traded, you'll remember in 2023, when the Chicago Bears dealt the top pick to the Carolina Panthers, who then selected Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. That trade got the Bears back 4 draft picks, including 2 firsts and veteran wide receiver DJ Moore. Now, it hasn't paid out for either of those franchises just yet, and we'll see what happens with now Caleb Williams getting Ben Johnson as his new head coach. We'll see if Bryce Young can continue to make progress. It certainly didn't start well, but Bryce Young made strides down the stretch this season. Both teams, not quick fixes, not cure-alls necessarily, but Carolina drafted a quarterback with the number one overall pick. That hasn't fixed their franchise because the Panthers still have a great many more needs. Then Chicago drafted Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. Caleb Williams does not have enough around him to be successful and went through the process where his coach was fired and his offensive staff tried to make adjustments. He had his own learning curve, and he wasn't necessarily ready for the moment that he was placed in, even though the expectation when you're drafted number 1 overall is that you need to be ready to play almost immediately. Very rarely does a number 1 overall pick quarterback not play right away. So you've got these options on the table. You've got the option to take one. You've got the option to trade. Will it yield as much value, as much return as the Bears got back from Carolina? It could, and it depends on who's willing to come up. If that team is, for example, the New York Giants or the Cleveland Browns, well, Myles Garrett is a pretty appealing acquisition there. If Myles Garrett is included for any package that includes the number 1 overall pick and it only requires you to trade back to 2, I would be very much interested in a deal like that, because there's nobody in this draft that has the proven track record of a Myles Garrett, and the Tennessee Titans need a pass rusher. And it still allows you the flexibility in that scenario to potentially add a quarterback, even if you don't do it at number 1 overall. There are so many different ways that they can dictate their future, and how they go about this is going to define the careers of Mike Borgonzi, of Chad Brinker, and probably of Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans. It could set them up for long-term success. It could set them up for immediate failure. How they go about this will be something that Titans fans are very, very much locked in on. And we really won't have the answer as to whether they did it right for a bare minimum a season. It's going to take some time to see how all this stuff plays out. Curtis says, y'all don't like Sanders or Ward. I understand. I don't get it, but I understand. It's not, again, there are some people who will veer to extremes and say that they don't like these 2 players. It's not that I don't like these 2 players. It's just I'm looking at value. I'm looking at opportunity cost in the same way, like I talked about T'Vondre Sweat. Obviously, interior defensive linemen are different than quarterbacks, but this is a good recent example. T'Vondre Sweat's a good player. T'Vondre Sweat may end up being a really good draft pick for the Tennessee Titans. But the Tennessee Titans got an offer for that T'Vondre Sweat pick from the Los Angeles Rams that they did not take, that allowed the Carolina Panthers to cash in, to add more draft capital in the second round, to further replenish their roster that the Tennessee Titans did not get. They took Sweat. They were fine with it. Last year, there's no reason to question the Sweat pick, except that Braden Fisk was the player that Los Angeles was trying to come up for and eventually did come up for and do a deal with Carolina the very next pick. If Sweat was drafted 38, then Los Angeles traded up to 39 to get Fisk. Whether or not they would have had success in either spot, there's going to be some conversation had about T'Vondre Sweat and Braden Fisk. Was T'Vondre Sweat worth just taking with that pick there? Or could you have gotten T'Vondre Sweat later with the team trying to come up and get Braden Fisk and still had the opportunity to get a couple extra draft picks while also drafting T'Vondre Sweat? These are the kind of risk-reward opportunity costs that you have to consider when talking about maneuvering in the draft. And the quarterback situation is a much different conversation because it is much more valuable than any other position on the field. So we'll see what tact the Titans ultimately end up taking. And Sweat, for example, could end up being worth it. Cam Ward could end up being worth it. Shedeur Sanders could end up being worth it. And we'll have no idea until 2 or 3 years down the road at this point in time. There are flaws with every prospect. There were flaws with Trevor Lawrence. There were flaws with Andrew Luck. There were flaws with Lamar Jackson, flaws with Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Myles Garrett even had some questions coming out of the draft process, whether he loved football or not. Remember that whole thing about his interest in things that were not football. In the case of Myles Garrett, it didn't matter. In the case of Josh Rosen, it actually did. Like, there were the same kind of questions, the same kind of dialogue around Josh Rosen that there was around Myles Garrett, because they're highly intellectual individuals, and people were questioning, do they love ball enough to gut it out the way that you need to gut it out? Josh Rosen didn't. Myles Garrett did. So these things can be brought up to an extent. Real Cricket says, by that logic, Levis could still be worth it. Ian Rappaport went on 3HL. Well, let me read a spot, and then we'll talk about what Ian Rappaport said on 3HL about Will Levis being a good draft pick here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. Zen Sports has all manner of great offers for you. Just because football season is done does not mean that your betting experience should be. Zen Sports will reserve several VIP tables at Dirk Bentley's Whiskey Row every other Saturday, beginning this Saturday, February the 15th. They are inviting all of their customers to email us at events@vipplayinc.com or contact support if you would like them to reserve a spot for you. This past Saturday, they were able to notify their first winner of their February sweepstakes weekly top earner prize that they have earned a $250 bonus bet every week from Saturday to Friday. The customer who has accrued the most entries into the VIP Players Courtside Club sweepstakes will earn a $250 bonus bet. As a reminder, their February VIP Players Courtside Club sweepstakes is in full force. You can use the promo code ATOZTN. New users will receive 500 bonus entries when they sign up using that code. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports for more information. It's good, great offers by Zen Sports to get you involved. There's a lot of school of thought around opportunity cost. Was Will Levis a good draft pick as a player that they gave up a third-round pick for to trade up in the second round to make sure that they could draft him? It hasn't worked out yet. It may never work out. Was it worth it? I would argue yes. If you'd have hit on Will Levis, your life would have gotten infinitely easier. There was reason to believe that it would not. I mean, nobody thought it was going to, even if you were down on the Will Levis experience or not feeling Will Levis as a pro prospect, or, were a Vols fan and said, I saw this guy play at Kentucky, he's not any good, what are you talking about? Even if you were one of those people, it is still worth the swing of a second-round pick on the most important position, given the high-level traits that he brought to the table, understanding that he hadn't really been tested throughout the course of the rigors of a full NFL season, and you had no idea whether he would be able to hold up or not. Now, you had no idea that he would mentally melt down as often as he did, that he would bring more chaos to the huddle. For example, Jalen Hurts is not a chaotic person. He's a very calming, steady presence in the middle of a chaotic huddle. A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, all manner of other different big personalities, demanding personalities, alpha personalities. And Jalen Hurts has to manage the situation, manage the game, manage the clock, manage the atmosphere, and make sure that he still executes. He's very uniquely equipped to do that. Will Levis brought more chaos into an already chaotic situation. You can't have that. It exacerbated their problems. It caused a great deal of turnover issues this year, and the Levis thing failed spectacularly. But it doesn't mean that it was a bad idea in principle. I agree with the idea in principle, even if it didn't work out that way. Would you do it again? Obviously not, because you're armed with the results in hand already. But you would entertain that scenario again, even if it wasn't the best quarterback prospect, because the position is so valuable, and you would still be operating at a pretty high value level if you would have hit on a second round quarterback. The Philadelphia Eagles hit on a second round quarterback. Nobody's going to argue that Jalen Hurts wasn't a risk worth taking at that point in time. Everybody's going to look at that situation and say, yeah, that's the most important position. If you can find ways to put a player in position to succeed, maximize that value, then that value is going to be worth it each and every time. Will Levis is not. Will Levis is a bad example of that. But it's about the position as much as it's about every individual player. And you have to think about that when you're considering what teams, the cost-benefit analysis that teams are doing at this point. We will wrap up here with Bert, and in case you missed it, we'll see what he's brought to the table. We had some Aaron Rodgers discussion prepared for tonight, but at this point, we might as well just do it tomorrow. We will see what Bert has brought us right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by TrueMap Fitness in the Gulch. Your first workout is free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. Just the best personal training, group fitness classes, open gym facility, available on offer at TrueMavFitness.com. What do you got, Bert?
You tell me. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I would be interested in talking about the Super Bowl. We have not talked about the Super Bowl really at length on the Primetime program. I would be interested in talking about any manner of things, any number of things. I would be interested in talking about college basketball, but I know that's not what the Primetime audience wants.
Mostly, I would like to talk about D. Good saying, I would rather have Winston than Aaron Rodgers, and that's saying something. And I would agree with that. I would also rather have Winston because that is my cat's name, and it made me think of Winston as the quarterback of the Titans, and I think he would fare pretty well.
You've been watching too much Kitten and Puppy Bowl, it would seem.
I'm just saying that if they...
What do you want me to do with that, Bert? What do you want me to do with that joke? That's a dead fish you just dropped in my lap and then expected me to do something with it. What do you want me to do with that joke?
Why the hell is the Puppy Bowl a once-a-year occurrence? Where are the playoff games? Where's the regular season? How the hell did these dogs get in this position? I need to know, and I care about the different teams of this. Now, is it only puppies that have teams? Is there a strict mammal-only restriction? I wouldn't mind a team of reptiles while they would probably be pretty poor at catching the ball. I think having diversity in the league would make a lot of difference for a lot of young animals out there who grow up.
Roger Goodell saying they were not treating DEI as a trend, so perhaps that applies to lizards and kittens and horses, all manner of animals that want the opportunity to participate in their respective kind of Super Bowls.
Who is feeling the worst this post Super Bowl Monday? Everybody has a hangover. If you went to work today, I'm guaranteeing half the people weren't there, and the people that were not doing any work. It was the same at our job today, except for we get to talk about sports. So ours is pretty nice, but everyone else around the office was dragging. If you're a fan of the Chiefs, you are dragging today. This is either the Super Bowl the day after is either the best or worst day of your fandom if you are a fan of either team. I genuinely feel for Chiefs fans, and the way when I say I feel like they deserve it, because you've had 2 years of getting to spew all this shit out here that we've all had to listen to. Oh, we're the greatest. We have the greatest coach. We have the greatest offensive line. Look at our defensive line. We just got smacked around by somebody who did it better than you. And oh, by the way, that's his old cuck team who came out from around the shadows like, oh, you thought you're going to get away from us? You thought you're going to be the best coach of all time? No way. Not going to happen. So I don't feel bad for Chiefs fans. Someone I do feel bad for is Nick Wright, mostly because of his large nose, and he can do nothing about that. That's not his fault.
Stop it. I met him at Super Bowl last week. He's a lovely man. Yeah,
you did not say that when we met before the show. But I will say he gained a little bit of my respect today. I can appreciate someone leaning into a bit. I can appreciate someone bearing their soul on national television. Mm-hmm. And today he had probably one of the better comeuppances that a fan of the Chiefs has had to deal with in failure.
Live from New York. It's a show that's in a bit of a predicament, you see. We don't have an unlimited budget here. We kind of have to put some bets on the board. So we really prepared because you were so persistent.
You told me all year they're practicing. I was arguing about point differential.
Smartly, Brew. And now we get to have the only show with a proper celebration for Luka's Laker debut. Oh my, what a day.
We've planned this whole thing for Chiefs, and we're still going to do it.
Don't you pop that.
It's not at your face.
Don't you pop that.
But we have to do it. We can't return any of this stuff
You spent too much money.
We spent
You guys hung the banners.
They were
They're-
3 Super Bowls.
We didn't have to hang them.
It just is what it is at this point. I'm sorry. It's the first hour. First things first.
The first hour, it gets worse. It continually gets worse. You would think like, let's get it out of the way. There's plenty of other stuff we could talk about, right? Well, you would be wrong because they continually harassed Nick.
No.
Just randomly in segment. This is some stupid shit that we would do.
They didn't have no circle. They paid the worst game. Now Nick cries. It's so sad. Mahomes, F game, F game, F game.
Oh. That is exactly how we would do that television show. That's exactly how you and I and Lucas would do it.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I gained just a little bit of respect for Nick Wright. I like the game respects game. That was a great way to pull that off. And it is tough to lean into that shit. Believe me, as someone who can barely stand Ravens regular season losses, it is tough to lean into those things.
Nobody is moodier after their team loses than Bert.
I don't know why we give a shit about this stupid. We get so caught up in it. And these grown ass men do not give a rip whether we live, die, pay our rent, eat shit. It
They don't
doesn't
think
matter.
about you at all.
They don't think.
I know this because I work with them almost every day. They don't think about you at all.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
These players, that sometimes they'll be asked about the fans, and they'll talk about how every team has the greatest fan base in the world, and they do it for the fans. No, they do it for the money.
Right.
Don't lie to yourself. They do it because they like the trips to Cabo, even if they're not ready for the trips to Cabo when their season ends, or if their season is over before the season's actually over. The amount of investment of fans versus the players that are as invested as the fan bases are, it's really not even remotely close. And athletes like Kevin Durant have been trying to tell you guys this for years, and all you do is hate Kevin Durant for it, and then try and convince yourself that your favorite player is going to take a hometown discount when his contract comes up in free agency. Doesn't work.
I thought it was funny today. Shannon Sharp was like, they were discussing the prospect of, since Aaron Rodgers isn't returning, would Sam Darnold return to New York? And they were like, he wouldn't go back. Shannon Sharp said, I go to hell for $50 million. Like, you're damn right. It's all about the money. You think he wouldn't go back there and bring out the Ghostbusters? Like they would. You're going to go wherever the money is. I'm tired as hell. This has been a subpar in case you missed it, but it's what you missed.
It wasn't your best, but it honestly wasn't your worst either. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. Radio show tomorrow from 10 to 1. We'll talk about what the 2024-2025 season taught us from a Titans perspective, from a league-wide theme perspective. We got a big programming announcement on Wednesday in the 11 o'clock hour, which we're very excited to tell you more about. We've been working on some plans for another exciting event that we're looking forward to having you guys involved with, and I'll give you more information about that on Wednesday. The football season is technically over, but not for you. Your football season's been over since October, so we're just going to keep this train rolling, baby, and we're going to give you the most exhaustive draft coverage out there. I'm going to be at Combine, owners meetings, the NFL draft, all of it, and we will bring you live insight and analysis here on A to Z Sports on 104.5 The Zone. Thank you guys for another, I won't call it a phenomenal football season because the football around here was ass. But for us, the show has always been fun to do. You guys, for some reason, continue to engage with the show at an abnormally high rate, even when the football is ass. So thank you guys for being a part of this for another football season. Let's see. This is if 19 was my first season doing primetime, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, this was our sixth NFL season doing the primetime show, and it's as good, certainly better than it was when we started. It's only going to get better from here, and we've enjoyed it all the way through. So have a great rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
There's a very low percentage of this that is smiles